name is Keith Burgess. This is a video proposal for my thesis to determine if child BMI is predictive of adult coronary heart disease. This is what I will be covering in today's video: an introduction, literature review, hypothesis, methods, possible study limitations, and a conclusion. Childhood obesity is taking America by storm, with 32% of children being labeled as overweight or obese in 2016. The association between childhood obesity and adult weight has been well established, resulting in the development of risk factors for cardiovascular diseases. However, research is lacking to understand the relationship between child body mass index, also referred to as BMI, and coronary heart disease. Per the World Health Organization, 42 million children under the age of 5 were affected by childhood obesity in 2015. Among the many health outcomes associated with obesity, coronary heart disease is considered the most principal health concern of the present century and is the cause of most deaths in any society. And looking at valid tools of measure, a study questioned and answered whether BMI was a valid tool for determining weight classification. Example, those considered normal body weight from those overweight or obese. Body mass index, or BMI, validity was questioned due to the formula weight divided by height, which represented the human body as being a geometric square. BMI was compared against body surface area, which body surface area is used in determining medication dosages. These two were compared to determine which had a higher association of detecting a fat mass. BMI came out on top, proving to still be the best method for determining weight status. Another tool examined was the CDC's growth charts, which was compared to the Cooper Institute's growth charts to determine if one was better at identifying those children with high BMI. The differences between the two: the CDC's growth charts are free to acquire, used in United States medical settings, and largely used in research publications. The Cooper Institute growth charts have to be purchased through software-based, and they're used in about 1/3 of the U.S. school settings. Through the comparison of both charts, nothing significant was determined, except that the CDC's growth charts results were easier to understand, thus decreasing the chances of interpretation error. Nutrition and the lack of physical activity are viewed as having a high influential effect on weight. But U.S. programs such as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, was created to combat the nutrition issue, which produced mixed results in combating the obesity epidemic in children, and have shown an increase in weight status for the women participating in the program. Socially, there's a strong correlation between parental BMI and the child's BMI, showing the father figure's education demonstrates an inverse relationship to the child's BMI more than the mother's. Taking a look at environmental influences, obesogens are a newly discovered and potentially associated influence on obesity. Obesogens work chemically by activating receptors causing the production of more fat cells. But whether the lack of diet and exercise or environmental chemical, heart disease is a high risk factor for obese children. research is lacking in understanding the effects of childhood obesity independent of other factors. There are countless studies comparing childhood weight status to adult weight status to determine risk association to a disease. However, research states the importance of providing treatment for obese children and adolescents, along with highlighting the lack of published papers or large-scale trials to combat the obesity epidemic. Research on things associated with increasing obesity, such as environmental factors, nutrition, and physical activity, have discussed critical developmental stages for obesity. These are the prenatal period, adiposity rebound, and adolescence. Studies need to be done to understand the relationship of these developmental stages on adverse health outcomes, such as coronary heart disease. Coronary heart disease used to begin in subjects late 50s, but is more frequent in younger age groups. A study evaluating childhood obesity and coronary heart disease stated, childhood obesity is predictive of adult risk factor levels in coronary heart disease morbidity. But even with such a strong statement, research is lacking in strengthening this agreement that childhood obesity could play a very important role in the onset of coronary heart disease. Kind of taking a look at my hypothesis. There is no statistical significant relationship between being obese throughout childhood and an increased risk of coronary heart disease. There is no statistical significant relationship between transitioning from a normal BMI child to an obese adolescent and an increased risk for coronary heart disease. There is no statistical significant relationship between transitioning from an obese child to a normal BMI adolescent and an increased risk for coronary heart disease. And lastly, there is no statistical relationship between a child's BMI during the adiposity rebound and the predictability of an increased risk for coronary heart disease. The purpose of this study is to determine if childhood BMI is a predictor of coronary heart disease in adulthood using the Bogalusa Heart Study data. The Bogalusa Heart Study was started in June of 1972 to investigate how health choices made in childhood affect coronary diseases in adulthood. The Bogalusa Heart Study is an observational study following 12,000 participants living in the semi-rural community of Bogalusa, Louisiana. The Bogalusa Heart Study used a standardized questionnaire when collecting data that asked demographical questions along with family medical history and physical activity. The other method of data collection was through a medical examination that documented height, weight, blood pressure, lipid profile, and blood lab values. This study will use secondary data from the Bogalusa Heart Study to determine if childhood BMI is a predictor of coronary heart disease in adults. Using the statistical package for the social sciences, or SPSS, the data will be tested by running a logistic regression that will determine the degree of predictability of an independent variable to a dependent variable. The tested independent variables will be sex, age, and BMI. The dependent variable will be those who are not diagnosed with coronary heart disease. However, each study has potential limitations that could affect the results. These limitations are most of the participants in the study were born before the obesity epidemic. Thus, a more extended term of obesity could demonstrate a stronger relationship. 2. The study's findings will be based on residents from Bogalusa, Louisiana, so the results may not positively reflect other communities. And lastly, the Bogalusa Heart Study is based on a non-probability sample, meaning the population may or may not be well represented. To conclude, childhood obesity is an ever-growing global epidemic, being influenced by lack of nutrition and physical activity, social and environmental factors. Research has continually grown to show the relationships between these listed influences and the correlation between child to adult BMI. It has yet to focus on the outcomes stemming from child obesity independent of adult weight status. This study will evaluate the relationship between childhood obesity and coronary heart disease using the data from the Bogalusa Heart Study.